I never thought I'd post here, but this story's been sitting in my head like static, and I need to get it out. A few months ago, I started noticing something strange about myself. Not in the way people talk about burnout or getting older, but in this quiet, unsettling way, like my brain had lost its sharpness overnight. I'd read a page in a book and forget what it said 5 minutes later. I'd walk into a room and have no clue why. My girlfriend, Maya, said I was just stressed. And maybe I was. Work had been rough. I'm a data analyst, and the deadlines were tighter than ever. But it wasn't just work. It was like my focus had been hijacked. One night, I stayed up late to finish a report, and I noticed something weird on my computer. The browser history was filled with productivity YouTube channels and self-help videos, but not ones I'd watched. Stuff about neural enhancement and dopamine detoxing. I asked Maya if she'd been using my laptop. She said no, with this small laugh, like I'd asked if she'd been moonlighting as a hacker. But the thing was, my passwords were saved. No one should have been able to get in without my fingerprint. I brushed it off. Maybe I'd clicked something by mistake. But over the next few weeks, I started catching odd details. My supplements reordered before I finished them. New bottles showing up with different labels. A pill organizer appeared on my desk, filled for the week, even though I hadn't filled it. I asked Maya again, and she said she was helping me stay on track. But she couldn't explain where the new pills came from. That was the moment something in me started to panic. Because the thing is, I didn't feel like myself anymore. It's strange when your own thoughts stop feeling like yours. I confronted Maya the next morning. I didn't go in angry, at least not at first. I just needed to understand what was happening. She was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, scrolling through her phone like it was any other day. I told her I needed to ask something serious. She put her phone down, gave me that slightly impatient look people give when they already think they know where the conversation's going. I told her I knew she'd been changing my supplements and logging into my accounts. Her face went blank for a second, then she smiled, like I'd caught her hiding a surprise party. She said, "I was trying to help you, babe. You've been so distracted lately. You're always tired, and you said you wanted to focus more." That "help you" line hit me weird. I asked her what exactly she'd been giving me. She said it was a natural blend of focus enhancers, and she'd gotten them from a wellness coach on Instagram. I asked to see the bottles. She hesitated, then opened the kitchen drawer. There they were, lined up neatly, all with shiny labels that looked professional enough to be convincing. But none of them were brands I recognized. I looked one up right there. The website was sketchy, half the text in another language, no ingredients list, no FDA disclaimer. I asked her if she'd actually researched this stuff. Her answer? "People overthink things. You just need to trust me." That's when something in me snapped a little. I told her she had no right to experiment on me like that. She started crying, saying she just wanted me to be my best self again, that I'd been distant, unmotivated, and she thought she was helping me get back on track. But it didn't feel like help. It felt like control, like she was turning me into some project she could fix. I told her to pack her things and go stay with her sister for a few days while I figured out what was actually happening to me. She cried harder, begged me not to make it a big deal. But it was already too late for that. That night, I didn't sleep. My head felt clearer, but my heart was wrecked. The next day, I took those bottles straight to a local lab that does supplement analysis. They said they'd get back to me in a week. I remember sitting in my car afterward, just staring at the steering wheel, wondering how the hell I'd ended up in this situation, afraid of what my girlfriend might have been giving me. While waiting for results, I started noticing other weird things. My smartwatch had activity logs from times I knew I was asleep. My phone had screen time reports showing hours spent on focus apps I didn't remember using. That was when I decided to check my home office security camera, the one I installed months ago just to keep track of deliveries. I pulled up the feed, scrolled through the dates, and my stomach dropped. There she was, Maya, coming into my office late at night while I was sleeping. She'd open my laptop, plug something in, sometimes stay for almost an hour. No sound, just quiet movements like she'd done it 100 times before. In one clip, she actually adjusted my chair, sat in it, and typed something I couldn't see. Then she looked straight at the camera, just for a second, and smiled. That smile, I can't even describe it. It wasn't evil exactly. It was calm, like she knew she'd been caught eventually and didn't care. I texted her that morning and told her not to come back. She said she understood, but she hoped I'd see things clearly soon. That line gave me chills. A week later, the lab called. The capsules had traces of a banned nootropic compound, something that affects dopamine regulation and focus. In the short term, it can make you hyper-focused. In the long term, it can mess up your brain chemistry. I remember sitting there, phone in hand, my pulse pounding in my ears. The woman I thought I loved had been feeding me something illegal, without my knowledge, to help me concentrate. And the worst part? It almost worked. I didn't know if I should call the cops, a lawyer, or a therapist, but I knew I couldn't let this slide. After that phone call, I felt like the ground had dropped out beneath me. I'd never been in a situation where I had to think, did someone I love actually drug me? I didn't even know where to start. Calling the police felt extreme, but so did doing nothing. I called my brother instead. He's a lawyer, the calm, rational type. When I told him what happened, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "You need to document everything. Every message, every pill, every test result." So that's what I did. Over the next few days, I gathered screenshots, photos of the supplements, even the video footage. It felt like building a case against someone I used to share a bed with. Then Maya started texting again. At first, it was the usual, apologies, long paragraphs about how she just wanted to help me. But then the tone shifted. She started saying things like, "You're overreacting," and "You wouldn't have gotten that promotion without me." That's what hit me the hardest. She actually thought she'd improved me. When I didn't respond, she showed up at my door. I didn't let her in, but she stood there for almost half an hour, crying, saying she'd been desperate because she thought I was fading. She told me she found those focus supplements in a private online forum where people talked about optimizing partners. Apparently, it was a trend, people secretly giving their significant others productivity boosters. That made my blood run cold. When she finally left, I sat on the couch in silence for a long time. I couldn't even bring myself to cry. I just felt hollow. A few days later, the lab sent a full report, confirmed traces of modafinil, caffeine powder, and a restricted synthetic stimulant, enough to cause long-term side effects if taken consistently. That's when I knew this wasn't just a bad breakup. It was something darker, something that would take months to recover from, mentally and physically. But I decided something that night. I wasn't going to be a victim. If my mind had been tampered with, I was going to rebuild it from the ground up, by myself this time. After that night, I made a promise to myself. No shortcuts, no hacks, no weird supplements or miracle routines. I wanted my focus back, but naturally. I wanted me back. The first thing I did was toss everything she'd ever brought into the apartment. Every bottle, every productivity book, even the damn sticky notes she'd left on the mirror saying things like "Stay sharp today." It all went in a trash bag. Then I went dark. No social media. No texts. I told my boss I needed a few weeks of remote work. I shut out everything that wasn't essential. For a few days, I just sat in silence and tried to listen to my own thoughts, something I hadn't done in months. It was weird at first. My brain felt like a cluttered attic. Random memories popping up, songs looping for no reason, moments with Maya flashing like static. But little by little, it started clearing. I started journaling every morning. Just 3 pages, stream of consciousness. Then I started walking instead of scrolling when I felt restless. I deleted every app that drained my attention. No TikTok, no news feeds, no endless notifications. And then something unexpected happened. My concentration started to hurt. I don't mean physically. I mean focusing on something for more than 15 minutes felt uncomfortable, like lifting a muscle that had atrophied. But I pushed through. I forced myself to read again, one chapter at a time. A week later, I noticed something small but huge. I could finally finish a thought. I could sit down, focus, and actually remember what I was doing. But the real turning point came when I found out what Maya had been doing while I was detoxing. My brother sent me a link to a post on a private wellness subreddit. And right there, under a fake username, was someone describing my situation in disturbing detail. Same job, same supplements, same experiment. She was bragging about it, calling it her Project Phoenix. My hands were shaking as I read it. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether she meant well. She hadn't. Reading that post felt like being punched in the chest. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't confused. She was proud of what she'd done. In her post, she described helping her boyfriend unlock his full focus potential by microdosing unapproved compounds. She even mentioned how he, meaning me, didn't notice anything except feeling sharper. She called it a success story. I remember staring at the screen, my heart pounding so hard it felt like I could hear it in my ears. The comments were full of people asking for her protocol. One even said, "You're such a caring girlfriend." That line broke me. I forwarded the post to my brother. He told me to save it, timestamp, URL, everything. Then he said, "This isn't just unethical. It's criminal." Part of me wanted to press charges right then and there. Another part of me just wanted to disappear, to pretend none of it happened. But I knew ignoring it wouldn't help. So I filed a report. The detective who called me back sounded skeptical at first, until I showed him the lab results, the footage, and the post. Then his tone changed completely. He said he'd seen controlling partners before, but never anything like this. While the legal stuff was starting, I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I started meditating, badly, at first. My mind would wander every 5 seconds. But there was something grounding about sitting still and realizing how much noise had been in my head for months. I stopped drinking coffee for a while, switched to water, tried breathing exercises, started journaling every night about how I felt. I didn't do it to be some wellness guru. I did it because I needed something that was mine. Then one day, I got a call from the detective. He said they'd traced her online handle. It matched one of Maya's old accounts. She wasn't just posting about me. She was selling her method to people. That's when I realized this wasn't just a breakup or a betrayal. This was a complete violation of trust, safety, and autonomy. And I wasn't the only one. A week after that call, things started to unravel fast. The detective told me the subreddit post had been flagged and removed, but not before someone took screenshots and shared them across a few mental health forums. It spread like wildfire. People debating whether it was real, others horrified, some even defending her, calling it biohacking love. That phrase made my skin crawl. Then came the email from one of her old friends, someone I barely knew but had met once at a dinner party. She said she saw the post and recognized the details instantly. Apparently, Maya had tried something similar with her ex-boyfriend years ago, mixing his pre-workout powder with herbal focus enhancers. He'd ended up in the ER with heart palpitations. That was it. That was the final confirmation I needed that this woman had crossed a line way beyond reason. The police later told me they were looking into it as a potential case of unauthorized drug administration. She wasn't arrested immediately, but the investigation was serious enough that she couldn't contact me anymore. Still, that didn't stop the emotional wreckage. Even without her around, she was everywhere, in my thoughts, in the way I second-guessed every decision. I couldn't take a vitamin without wondering what was in it. I'd start an email and reread it 3 times, doubting my own words. But then, something unexpected happened. People started messaging me privately, strangers from Reddit and other forums. Some said they'd gone through similar things, not with drugs, but with partners who managed them, tracked their sleep, controlled their diets, controlled their focus. It hit me that this wasn't just about me. It was about how easy it is for control to hide behind help. I started writing about it. Just short posts at first, about regaining concentration naturally, about reclaiming your own thoughts after manipulation. Weirdly enough, helping others helped me heal. My focus improved, but more importantly, my clarity came back. I began noticing details again, the hum of the fridge, the way sunlight hit my desk in the morning. For the first time in months, I felt like a person again, not a project. And just when I thought the storm was over, Maya's sister called me out of nowhere. She said, "I think you should know what she's planning next." When I saw her name flash on my phone, my first instinct was to hang up, but something in me said to answer. Her voice was low, shaky, like she wasn't sure if she was doing the right thing. She said, "I'm not supposed to be calling you, but I think you should know what Maya's been saying." My heart started pounding again. I hadn't heard her name spoken out loud in weeks, and it hit harder than I expected. Her sister told me Maya had moved in with a friend in another city, and she'd been ranting online about how she'd been betrayed. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that she'd started talking about improving her formula. She claimed I'd overreacted because the dosage wasn't optimized. She was calling it Project Phoenix 2.0. Her sister sounded genuinely worried. She said, "She's not okay. She's obsessed. She thinks what she did was revolutionary." That word, revolutionary, stuck with me. It sounded so detached from reality, like she'd convinced herself she was some kind of visionary. I thanked her sister, told her I appreciated the warning, and hung up. Then I just sat there, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. It was like a second wave of betrayal, realizing she hadn't learned anything, that she was still out there, convincing herself she'd done something noble. I forwarded everything to the detective. He said they were expanding the investigation, possibly linking her to a few other incidents. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how easy it was for her to get into my routines, how she used my ambition against me. All those nights she'd said, "You just need to push through, or you'll thank me later." And I realized something. Focus isn't about working harder or hacking your brain. It's about protecting it. I decided to go deeper into rebuilding mine. The next morning, I signed up for therapy. Not because I felt broken, but because I finally understood I'd been living in someone else's version of improvement. I needed to define what better meant for me. The first session was rough. I couldn't stop shaking when I talked about the camera footage. But by the end, my therapist said something that stuck. "You don't have concentration problems. You have trust wounds." That hit harder than any nootropic ever could. Therapy started peeling back things I hadn't realized were even connected. It wasn't just about what Maya did. It was about how much I'd let her voice replace my own. Every time I made a decision, even something small like what to eat or when to work out, I'd hear her voice in my head. "That's not efficient," or "You should be optimizing that." It took weeks before I could recognize which thoughts were actually mine. My therapist gave me an exercise. She called it mental auditing. Every time I caught myself doing something on autopilot, I had to stop and ask, who decided this? Me or someone else's influence? That question changed everything. I realized how much of my life had been built around chasing other people's definitions of improvement. I wasn't focusing because I loved what I was doing. I was focusing because I was terrified of falling behind. So I started doing things that didn't make sense. I went on long walks without tracking steps. I listened to music with no lyrics, just to let my mind drift. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. At first, it felt stupid. My inner voice, or maybe her leftover echo, kept saying, "You're wasting time." But then, something strange happened. I started to feel present. Not productive, not efficient, just there. That's when my focus started to return, not forced, but natural. I could sit with a problem at work and actually think it through, instead of bouncing between tabs like a ping pong ball. It hit me one afternoon while reading a report. I'd been working for 3 straight hours without realizing it. No distractions, no loss of attention, just flow. And it wasn't because of a pill. It was because I trusted myself again. But just as things were finally starting to feel normal, I got an email that dragged me right back into the mess I thought I'd escaped. It was from a journalist. The subject line read, "Interview request about Project Phoenix." When I first saw that email, I almost deleted it. I thought it was some scam, or maybe a cruel joke. But the sender's name checked out, an investigative journalist for a reputable online publication. The message was short but unsettling. "Hi, I'm writing an article on unauthorized neuroenhancement trends. We've come across a case referred to as Project Phoenix, and we believe you were the victim. I'd like to speak with you if you're open to it. Confidentiality guaranteed." My stomach dropped. She was still out there, and now she'd gained enough attention to attract journalists. I forwarded it to my brother first. His response was simple: "Don't talk without legal counsel." But part of me wanted to talk. Not for revenge, but because I was tired of pretending it hadn't happened. I was tired of feeling like the only one. So after thinking it over for 2 days, I agreed to a call, with my lawyer on the line, just in case. The journalist's voice was calm and measured, the kind that makes you want to tell the truth. She said she'd interviewed 2 other people who claimed to have been part of similar enhancement experiments. Both described the same methods, secretly introducing focus drugs, tracking sleep, even using hidden apps. Hearing that shook me more than I expected. I wasn't an outlier. I was a case study. She asked what I'd learned through it all. I told her the truth. That concentration isn't something you hack. It's something you respect. She was quiet for a second, then said, "That's exactly what this story needs." When the article came out 2 weeks later, I almost didn't read it. But I did. It was titled, "When Love Turns into Control: The Hidden World of Relationship Biohacking." She didn't name me, but my story was there. My words, my pain, my recovery. The response online was overwhelming. People sharing their own experiences with manipulation disguised as help. Some wrote that the article made them re-examine their relationships. Others admitted they'd been the ones doing the controlling. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a witness. But of course, the story's reach didn't just stop with strangers online. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "I read your little interview. You still don't understand what I was trying to do." It was her. When I saw her text, my first instinct was to throw my phone across the room. My fingers hovered over the delete button for a long time, but I didn't. Part of me, I'll admit, the small, foolish part, wanted to see what she would say next. Her next text came 10 minutes later. "We were meant to be more than normal. You wouldn't have understood if I didn't push you." I froze. The audacity of it, the way she framed manipulation as love, made my blood boil. I didn't respond. Instead, I went back to journaling, like my therapist suggested. I wrote down everything I felt: anger, fear, disbelief, even a twisted sort of nostalgia. But at the end, I wrote one sentence over and over: "I am in control of my mind." That night, she called once, twice, 5 times. Each time, I ignored it. Her voicemail was a mix of apologies, rationalizations, and threats disguised as concern. Finally, I blocked her number, her social media, every possible channel. It felt like slamming a door on a storm. The weird thing? After I did that, the panic started to fade. I realized she had no power over me anymore. She couldn't sneak into my brain, couldn't influence my thoughts, couldn't mess with my focus. I took a walk the next morning without my phone, just to feel what it was like to move through the world uninterrupted. Sunlight hit my face, the wind brushed my arms, and for the first time in months, my mind felt mine. I started reading again, finishing books that had been gathering dust. I cooked meals without timing or measuring, just following instinct. I even went back to work, and, for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone but myself. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy, but the more I rebuilt my routines around my own choices, the clearer my mind became. And then, one day, I realized something unexpected. I could focus on someone I cared about without losing myself in the process. Not in a romantic sense, but in life, in work, in thought. Maya had tried to steal that from me. She almost succeeded, but I had taken it back. After blocking Maya and cutting off every trace of her influence, I started rebuilding my routines from scratch. It wasn't about productivity hacks or nootropics. It was about me and what actually made my mind feel alive. I started with the small things. Making my bed every morning. Drinking a glass of water before coffee. Writing down 3 things I wanted to focus on each day, but only because I wanted to, not because anyone told me to. I went back to the gym, but instead of tracking every calorie or heart rate spike, I moved just to feel my body moving. I took walks in the park, letting my thoughts wander without judgment. At first, it was chaotic. My brain was like a messy room that hadn't been cleaned in years. But gradually, the clutter started to disappear. Then I tried meditation, not the fancy app kind, just sitting still and paying attention to my breathing. 5 minutes at first, 10 minutes, then 15. And with each session, I noticed I could focus for longer periods without forcing it. The real turning point came one Sunday morning. I sat down with a blank page and started brainstorming ideas for a personal project I'd been ignoring for months. Normally, I would have gotten distracted after 5 minutes, checking email or scrolling the news. But this time, I kept writing. Hours passed. I didn't notice. I didn't need any stimulant, any external push. I was finally in the flow, entirely on my own terms. It hit me then. Concentration isn't about forcing your brain to work harder. It's about removing interference, protecting your mental space, trusting yourself. And while Maya's actions had damaged my trust, they had also inadvertently forced me to rebuild my mind from the ground up. By the end of that week, I felt something I hadn't in months: calm confidence. A sense that no one could hijack my thoughts again, and if they tried, I'd notice before it ever took hold. I even started giving advice online about mental autonomy, about protecting your focus, about avoiding the trap of letting anyone else control your productivity. It wasn't about shaming Maya. It was about helping others reclaim themselves before they ended up like I almost did. As I settled into this new rhythm, I realized the story had taught me things I never expected. First, concentration isn't a skill you can hack. It's a habit, a mindset, and most importantly, a boundary. I had spent years thinking focus was about discipline or supplements, but really, it's about keeping your mind free from interference, protecting it like a fragile piece of art. Second, trust is fragile, but it's also recoverable. Losing it doesn't have to mean losing yourself. I learned that the boundaries I set now weren't just for my protection, they were a declaration. My mind belongs to me. And third, resilience doesn't come from ignoring pain. It comes from facing it head on. Watching Maya's betrayal, seeing the lab results, dealing with the media attention, it all hurt. But each step I took to reclaim my focus strengthened me more than any pill ever could. I even discovered a strange silver lining. Because I went through all of this, I could recognize subtle manipulations in everyday life. People trying to influence me, even in minor ways, suggesting shortcuts, guilt tripping, helping me without permission. I caught them immediately. It made me more empathetic too. I started helping friends and strangers recognize when they were being manipulated or overpowered in ways they didn't even notice. And that gave me purpose beyond myself. But here's the part that surprised me the most. I didn't just regain my concentration. I found my voice. I wasn't quiet anymore. I wasn't afraid to say no, to enforce boundaries, to decide what was best for me without guilt. It was ironic in a way. The very thing Maya tried to destroy, my mental autonomy, ended up being rebuilt stronger than ever because I fought for it. And it all started with one uncomfortable realization. Someone can't make you focused. Only you can. Once I had reclaimed my concentration, I realized the work wasn't done. Focus isn't just about productivity. It's about the people and environments you let into your life. I had spent so long letting Maya dictate my mental space that I forgot what real support looked like. I started small, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, but this time being fully present with them. No phones, no multitasking, just listening and responding. The first few conversations felt awkward. I had to train my brain to stay fully engaged, but gradually, it became natural. I also learned to recognize subtle manipulations before they could take root. Not everyone is a Maya, but even small, helpful intrusions can erode trust if left unchecked. I became better at setting boundaries without guilt, explaining my limits honestly, and protecting my mental autonomy. Romantically, I realized I wasn't ready to date anyone yet. I had to rebuild the habit of trusting my own judgment first. But I could see the possibility of healthy relationships, partnerships where both people support each other's focus and growth without taking control. Work improved too. With a clear mind, I could tackle projects more efficiently and creatively without needing any artificial push. The irony wasn't lost on me. The ordeal that almost destroyed me ended up making me sharper, more resilient, and more self-aware than ever. And the weirdest part? Even though I still carry the memory of what happened with Maya, it no longer haunts me. It's a lesson, not a burden. I started thinking about what I could share with others who might be in similar situations. That's how I ended up here, typing all of this, hoping someone reads it and realizes your focus, your mind, your autonomy. Those are yours, and no one has the right to take them. Looking back, I realized this whole nightmare taught me more than any self-help book or productivity hack ever could. Losing my focus wasn't just about chemicals or sleep deprivation. It was about control, trust, and boundaries. Here's what I learned, and what I'd tell anyone in a similar situation. Protect your mind fiercely. Your concentration is yours. If someone tries to manipulate it, even with good intentions or claims of them, they're crossing a line. Don't rationalize it away. Small, natural habits matter more than shortcuts. Meditation, journaling, walking, focused work sessions. These aren't glamorous, but they rebuild your brain in a sustainable way. Boundaries aren't optional. Saying no to intrusion, even from loved ones, isn't selfish. It's survival. You can't let anyone treat your focus like a project they control. Trust is earned, not assumed. And losing it doesn't have to destroy you. It's painful, yes, but recovering it for yourself is possible, and it's empowering. Flow can't be forced, it can only be protected. I learned that the deeper the interference, the more rewarding it feels to reclaim your mind. True focus comes from clarity, calm, and ownership. Maya tried to steal that from me. She almost succeeded. But in the process, I found something stronger than the focus I lost, the ability to protect it forever. I'm sharing this because I know people will stumble into situations like mine. Partners, friends, even colleagues who overstep in ways that feel helpful but are actually controlling. Don't ignore it. Fight for your autonomy. Rebuild slowly. Trust yourself. And for what it's worth, Concentration isn't a pill, a supplement, or a trick. It's your mind, your rules, your life. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does.